right? The alternative to what is only a thought. It cannot be anything other than a thought. So there is no alternative to the present moment. The present moment is what it is. And so stopping and easing ourselves into the gaps, into the little moments of silence, is an act of courage, actually. It requires the readiness to find who we are. And from that point, our conversations, any teachings, become much more interesting. Because otherwise there's always the subtle expectation that some kind of knowledge should come from the outside, that whoever is talking should convey some kind of information that is going to help me to advance on my path. But the practice has nothing to do with information. The practice is in the realm of feeling, of being, if we want. And so it's really important that we lay our attention not just on the verbal content of our communication, but also on all the other elements of the present moment. And we start with the silence, with the gaps, because that makes it easy. That makes this presence come forward in a very clear and easily perceivable way. But then we can also include the quality of the environment, of the room, of the color, of the light, the feeling in our body. And this makes our conversation really something complete. We're getting all the elements that are communicating to us and not just focusing on a few elements and building a story on top of that, because that story is bound to be very incoherent. It may explain some things. There's always a theory, right? Our mental story, our mental interpretation is just a theory, but it never describes the actuality of experience. So here, allowing all these different elements to be part of our exchange, it makes our conversation actual and not theoretical. So that the communication is primarily being conveyed by the feeling and not by the thought, by the verbal discourse that we are engaging in. And today I would like to propose a short exploration of the boundary between subject and object. And we've already started with some of the meditations that I published to look into boundaries, to see how boundaries are a very fictitious and almost unperceivable entity. They have more to do with thought than with actual factors of our present moment, of our reality. And a very fundamental, maybe the most fundamental boundary in this, and the one that is most important to the practice of meditation, is the boundary between subject and object. Because meditation is always a dance between these two elements. Meditation is about finding out who the subject of the meditation is, and not engaging the object head on, not getting stuck with trying to go too far in counting our breathing, or to try to resolve our anger, try to become peaceful, try to find some particular state of concentration. You see, when we do this, we always focus in on objects. But the point is that if we look for object, we'll never stop searching, because objects come and objects go. The objects, they have this tendency of arising at some point, staying for a while, and then they decay and disappear. And so whatever practice we base on objects, even if these objects are, dressed up with very sumptuous words and some kind of language that transmit that idea that this object is really worth seeking, like concentration or nirvana or whatever that object can be, will never be that kind of search will never end, because objects have this characteristic of arising, staying for a little while, and then disappearing. So the practice of meditation is all about who the subject of the meditation is. And the invitation is to go back and to really look, who is it that is practicing this sitting meditation? And if you're able to do that, the meditation always becomes something mysterious, beautiful, and very interesting, because we find out it's never the same person doing a meditation, and the meditation can never be repeated. The object shifts, but there is something fundamentally there's something fundamental about who the object of the meditation is. So in a way, the personality may change. The personality who's engaging in the meditation may be going through a difficulty today, and tomorrow may be feeling really relaxed. But there is something very essential when we let that go and we go even deeper. Who is it that is doing this? And so in the Buddhist tradition, there used to be this very famous koan, which is a very simple koan. It's about who is it that is chanting the Buddha's name. So that is the formulation of the koan, of this paradox. So the explanation of this is that in the practice, in the more popular practice of Buddhism, people believe that by reciting the Buddha's name, by chanting the Buddha's name repeatedly for a long period of time, we'll gain a lot of merits. And eventually, when we have enough merits, we will realize some very deep spiritual experience. But the meditation tradition, the Zen tradition, is trying to push this understanding to another dimension. Because as long as I'm just trying to gain merit, I'm really focused on an action, I'm just repeating, and the practice becomes mechanical, and I start counting, numbering things. So the more repetition I have, 10,000, great. If I can do 20,000, I'm much better. And you can see how that practice never comes to its aim, because there's always something more we can do. There's always something harder that we can try. We can always make more effort. But meditation itself has nothing to do with effort. Meditation itself is just about finding where is the source of that effort, where does it come from. And so the koan, the paradox that these teachers gave to their students to contemplate was, okay, you can do this practice of reciting the Buddha's name and think that you are acquiring merits and that you receive some kind of benefits. But see, who is it that is receiving that benefit? And the funny thing is that you turn your attention inward and you don't find anybody there. This is a shocking realization that between subject and object, there is actually no perceivable boundary. So, in a way, you can engage with an object just as long as you have this illusion in your mind that you are a separate subject observing it. But as you actually start observing who the subject of this experience is, you realize the subject is there only as the witness of the object. And actually, even to say it in that way is not really correct. There is just the object and the awareness of the object. And these are not two separate things, right? The knowledge of the object is not separate from the object itself. They arise together. And even to say they arise together is not correct, because they are the same thing. So this is what the Heart Sutra is trying to teach us in a very direct way, actually, by saying that emptiness is form and form is emptiness. The point is that as you look at it, as you really look at what you're doing with your meditation, you find out that there is no boundary between subject and object of experience. Instinctively, we divide these two things as two separate dimensions of reality, mind and body, subject and object, right? But as you look at it, there's no two things. It just isn't there. And it's not like you need to practice meditation for 10 years to realize that eventually, once you made enough effort, then there is no boundary. And to kind of, there is this romantic ideal also of breaking the boundary between subject and object, of penetrating, this boundary, that boundary of the object, and kind of like realize, as if there was something like a brick wall to break through and get to the other side. But the realization is actually much more simple, much more ordinary, much more easy to get in a way. And that's what is always there in our experience. Right? So if you stop and we just look, there isn't any boundary. And even now, so as you are looking at the screen, as you are looking, at me talking, you can realize that if you point at the screen, and you can do this game, of pointing at the screen, right? So the finger points at the direction of your attention, and out there in the world, you'll see an object. So I'm an object to you because I have a boundary, I have a color, I have all the characteristics that objects do have, right? But then if you turn around this finger and point at the subject, yet the realization here is shocking, because you are not an object. There is nothing there that you can call subject. The subject doesn't have a boundary, doesn't have a color, doesn't have a density. So you can best describe the subject as being transparent, but it's actually not even that, right? So it's this unity between the emptiness that you are, the apparent, evident emptiness that you are all the time when you're not hallucinating an idea of yourself, right? And the fullness up there, the form. So form is emptiness, emptiness is form. It's a very simple claim about the nature of your reality as it is in every possible situation, and not after 10, 20 years of practice. So the meditation that I share with you is an invitation to take 20 minutes and explore this with our eyes closed and with our body in a more static position, so that we're not too distracted by movements and having to adapt to the environment. But the exploration is very simple, and it doesn't require a sitting meditation to do. So you can kind of get the message of the meditation and then just try to observe the absence of that boundary in your daily life just by looking at things. See, when you look at a tree, there is no boundary between the subject, that is you, the being of you, and the tree. If there was a boundary, you could not see a tree, right? If the subject had a hard reality, then you could not see what's in front of you. You'd only see yourself. But the fact that you can see the world is a proof of your transparency. The fact that you are completely empty for the world to manifest. And that emptiness is actually what manifests the world that you are in, that you are living in. And that is the beauty of this practice, in a way. Because by being empty, you have space for everything else to be there, to manifest. And the surprising realization on this, the powerful realization, is that being empty, or rather realizing the emptiness, the spaciousness that we are here at the center of our universe, has a lot to do with witnessing beauty. Because beauty can be witnessed only when you have space for it to unfold. And when you are empty, actually beauty is seen everywhere. You don't need to be in front of a magnificent sunset or some kind of Himalayan peak. Now, that's very beautiful, of course. But if you are on the Himalaya, just stuck in your idea of reaching the top of Mount Everest, You get to Mount Everest and back, and you have seen nothing of what beauty is. That's the powerful realization. While by sitting on your car, on your armchair at home, you just need a moment of making yourself transparent, or rather, you're not making anything. You always are transparent. Just seeing the transparency and the spaciousness of who you are deeply inside, and then beauty arises as a natural manifestation of what's in front of you, right? Then what's in front of you has that fabric, that feeling, right? The feeling of beauty in it. So this is an exploration, of course, and I really hope that you won't take for granted these words, and just look. You know, it's not a given. This is not a teaching in the traditional sense. It's just an invitation to look at what is there, and to have fun, really to have fun with our experience, because it can be really rich and really exciting and beautiful. Good luck.